Hello guys, and welcome back for another Raging Demons RPG. This is the second installment, and for those of you that have already subscribed, I'm terribly sorry, but you're stuck with me. Ha ha. So, moving right along, I'm pleased to see that some of you have already started with the questions, so that's always good. Hate to think that I'm basically sitting here talking to myself, but consoling myself to the idea that it's okay because it's a little tiny eye on the top of my computer. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to actually read this person's email. I don't like to misquote people, because honestly, I hate it when people do it to me, and sometimes just even the slightest adjustment of words can put things so out of context that, you know, what started out as you took a girl out on a date turned into you had an extracurricular activity with the sheep. So, moving right along. This question comes from a user called Fean77. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He or she writes, I just ended playing in a campaign which the DM canceled because the players just couldn't get out of their munchkin perspective and were unable to immerse into the DM's world. The DM wasn't 100% familiar with 3.5 D&D, but she did well enough winging it, in my opinion. Coercing players to roleplay didn't seem to work well. What does a role-playing player do to help his DM in this case? What does a DM do? Well, thank you for writing that, Fiend, or Fian, or however you want to slice that. I'm going to say it straight. Trying to get your players to basically go along with what you're doing is very hard. It's very much like herding cats. I mean, sometimes if they just don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. My only suggestion would be, I don't know, to make it kind of clear to your group that, you know, you're very serious about continuing on this story, and unless they wish to progress further along, this story is basically going to collapse, and, you know, the game is ended. And that's the last thing anybody wants, in my opinion. Nobody actually wants the game to end, so why make the game master upset? Now, also, you have to bear in mind that you're running the game. You are calling the shots, and sometimes these folks take a little bit of time to kind of get on track. And the best way to get them on track, I find, especially if they're not strong role players, is a little surprise combat. I've always found that sometimes when you've got a group of players that are basically just messing around, not doing much else, and kind of steering away from sort of the main plot that you're trying to go for, a little surprise attack never hurt anybody. I mean, how hard is it to introduce an assassin, or a group of thieves, or the city guard? It just depends on which side of the law you're on. Now, because this is Dungeons and Dragons, perhaps you think that maybe because she didn't know the rules, she wouldn't, I guess, keep them under control, because she doesn't know what she's doing, and she's a girl. Her parts are on the inside. What does she know about gaming? I think that's absolute balderdash, poppycock, and a big bag of gully dwarf you-know-what. Basically, you don't need to know the rules. In fact, D&D even says that right in the front of all their books. In the end, the game master makes the rules. These are only a guide. My own personal experience, I once ran an alternity game. Look that one up if you don't know what that is. It'll be a hoot. It's a long, long dead franchise that was brought out by Wizards of the Coast around the time that D20 was just barely a glimmer in their eye. But you know what? I had a story laid down, and somebody else that was more familiar with the rules helped me out. The rules weren't the problem. Now, the story was obviously compelling enough to keep my players on track, but, you know, they do diverge from time to time because players are going to be players. Sometimes they just want to putz around in the tavern for as long as they can and, score this chick or this one, or, just completely useless activities, which are fine in some downtime, but you really do need to keep them on track. Find little ways, find little things that they enjoy in a game. I mean, if you're a new game master, you want to kind of understand your gaming group as a whole, and sometimes they have different motivations. Even though they're playing a different character than of course, their own personality in real life, a part of them does imprint on their character. So if they're really driven by combat and less by role-playing, maybe downplay the role-playing and build it up gradually, introducing them to more and more of that type of scenario until next thing you know, they haven't swung a sword in 2 sessions and they're going, well, what the hell? I didn't know I was good at role-playing. It's happened. I mean, I've got quite a few characters that are very Munchkin-like, and they think they can actually beat the game, and you just can't. And that's the biggest farce in all of gaming, is that you actually can beat these games. You're just basically supposed to be going along with the story and getting to the end of that story, and hopefully continues on to another story that builds a big and wonderful campaign. So, in closing, find out what your players are down with. Don't be afraid to ask them some questions about what you might change. I mean, don't sell yourself out, but kind of, cater a little bit to what they're into. And kind of just lastly, lay down the law. You are the game master. Your time is precious, and you basically are the linchpin in this game. If you walk away from the table because players are being restless and just completely disrespectful, the game stops. And they're just basically, those that game by themselves are the equivalent of, they're gaming masturbators in essence. They just sit there and they roll their dice all by themselves. So, unless they want that to happen, they better listen up. So, hopefully that helps you out, Fiend. Feel free to hit me back if that didn't, because sometimes I can be really way off base of what people intended. So, until next time, keep the dice rolling.